Okay. So it is just 1 o'clock and I'm going to wait till 1:02 just to kick off the meeting. So welcome everybody who's come on. And I'm just letting the waiting room and everybody kind of transition into the space.
Also, I'm not sure if Lindsay's going to make it in because she is on the road right now.
Okay.
Well, if she can't, I'll give a little update for her, the compliance monitoring.
Okay, so as we are just gathering to the kind of the 1:02 timeframe, welcome everyone to the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee of the Youth Development Council. Thank you, Alice, for joining us today in representing Christina. I know that she's very, very busy, so really appreciate you in the space. Tanasia, can I have you call the roll of the members so we can just get it on the record on who is here today?
Yes. Nakia, Sam, Andy, Tabiti, Adrian,
here,
Christina, Ralphie,
I'm here. Also serving as a proxy for Nakia.
thank you, Molly,
I am here.
and Kiwi. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So hopefully our additional team members will join as we kind of go along this morning, but I know that we have an agenda that we need to make sure that we are able to cover. And then of course our meeting is being recorded so that our team members can review it later if they so choose. So with that, Anya, I'm going to kick it over to you to talk about our data.
Actually, we have two people who will talk about our data to us. People who've just reviewed it and they put together a draft report. And on the basis of that draft report, they've put together a wonderful PowerPoint that they will be sharing with us. And I hope you'll have questions, because now is the time to ask questions, because we have people who can give us answers. And those two people are here, Juliet Makin and Anna Tamarkin. Those ladies are responsible for, they're the reason we collect data. Let's put it this way, because they know what to do with it. They know how to analyze, they know how to evaluate, and we share that information later with the field and with the legislators, and it helps us kind of guide where the JCP funding need to be going. And with that, my two favorite people in the world, Juliet and Anna, I don't know how you distributed who will be presenting what, but I'll just leave it up to you two.
Great, thank you so much, Anya. I am going to share some slides if that's okay.
You do.
Okay.
I'm to see them. Super excited.
Great. Just bring those up. I think it'll just take a second to get my monitors synced. Okay, can everyone see the slides? Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anna Tamarkin, and I'm here with my colleague, Juliet Mackin, and we are part of the team at NPC Research that conducts the biennial statewide evaluation of the JCP program. So we're really happy to be here. We're excited to share some highlights from the 2019-2021 statewide evaluation findings. So just starting off with a bit of broad context, the goal of the JCP program is to support the activities and efforts of all 36 counties and 9 tribes in Oregon to serve at-risk youth and prevent criminal behavior. The statewide JCP evaluation is conducted each biennium every 2 years to examine change in risk and protective factors, as well as the impact on juvenile crime among those youth who are served by the JCP program. We look at data on risk and protective factors using data collected on the JCP assessment tool. And we just wanted to kind of highlight and mention this time that the evaluation analysis really benefited this year from the introduction of the YDD data manager system developed by ODE. Because agencies and tribes had access to the system, they were able to enter their data into it. We were able to extract that data, and that resulted in us being able to look at data for more than double the number of youth than we have been able to in the last 5 or so years. So that's a really exciting development this time around. And just to give you a sense of this, in 2015-17, our evaluation included only data that we were able to access from JJIS and data that tribes were submitting directly to us at NPC Research. So we had a total of 21 counties, 8 tribes, and 810 youth included in the evaluation. The situation was similar in 2017-19. We had 17 counties, 9 tribes for just a total of 599 youth. But this time around, with the addition of the data manager system, we were able to include data for over 1,300 youth. So this is really a significant increase from the last couple of evaluations. Okay, so youth served by JCP programs. Over here on the left here, this is a breakdown of race, ethnicity, and you can see this bottom half of this box represents that 39% of youth served by JCP identify as youth of color. Most, 61% of youth identify as white. The average age of youth was 14 years, ranging from 17 to 18 years old. And just over half of the youth identify as male, 42 identified as female. And this year on the tool, we had a new category where youth could indicate that they identified with a different gender category. So that's this 1% purple part right there. Most of the youth, so that over 1,300 youth in our evaluation sample, were either low or medium risk at the time of their initial assessment. Right here, the blue sections of this pie or donut. The average risk score was 8, which indicates a medium risk level. There were 913 youth who had both an initial and a reassessment. And so those are the youth, that's kind of the subsample of youth for whom we were able to look at change in risk score. This graph shows the change in risk score for youth, those 913 I was just talking about. And we have broken it down by risk level at initial assessment. So just to orient us here, this is our total group of 913 youth with initial and reassessment data. This group is low risk, medium, and high. The blue bars indicate, the dark blue bars indicate a reduction in risk. The lighter blue indicates no change, and the purple indicates an increase in risk. So you can see here on this side that for 75% of youth served by JCP, their risk level either decreased or stayed the same. The greatest over here on this side among the high-risk youth, the greatest number of youth with reduced risk occurred among those that were identified as high risk at their initial assessment. This slide shows some of the specific risk factors where we see the most reduction. So these bars represent youth who had the risk factor at their initial assessment, but no longer had it at their reassessment. So these are kind of the top 5, and you can see here on the bottom, 78% had this risk factor that their behavior has hurt others or put them in danger on their initial assessment, no longer had it at reassessment. We see decreases in aggressive disruptive behavior at school, runaway, school dropout, and current substance use causing problems in the youth's life. We also see that these youth had increases in their protective factors. So over half of the youth actually gain an adult in their life that they can talk to. And around a third of the youth gain the protective factor of effective family communication, significant school attachment and commitment, and having friends who are academic achievers. We did look at to see if there were any differences among these specific risk reductions based on different demographic groups. And generally speaking, the decreases were consistent across race, age, and gender, with a few exceptions, which we've highlighted here for racial groups. So again, you can see the overlap and consistency. There are a couple of things we thought we would just note. Current substance abuse is in the top 3 for Native American youth, Latinx youth, and Black youth, but not for multiracial youth. And then runaway was a top risk reduction for Black youth and multiracial youth. We looked at the same thing for protective factors. Again, increases in protective factors were consistent across race, age, and gender. Few exceptions that we've noted here. We see that having an adult to talk to shows up as the top increased protective factor for Native American, Latinx, and multiracial. This was not in the top 2 for Black youth, but communication with family, effective communication with family was. We also always make sure to take a really close look at risk in the school domain. So 58% of youth had at least one issue that fell under the umbrella of the school domain at initial assessment. But we see a real significant reduction in school dropout, academic failure, and chronic truancy. And we see an improvement in school attachment for about a third of youth. Okay, so I'm going to turn now to some of the highlights from the impact on criminal behavior. So over half, 55% of the youth in our sample did not have a criminal referral before starting JCP services. So 55% did not have a criminal referral. 81% of youth did not have a criminal referral after JCP. And 89% of youth did not have detention after starting JCP. And this is within the 12 months after JCP. Criminal referrals and detention did vary by race. So we see fewer Latinx and Black youth avoiding criminal referrals prior to starting JCP services. So avoiding referrals, not having referrals, we see fewer there. We see fewer Black youth avoiding referrals after JCP services, as well as fewer Black youth avoiding detention after JCP. This year, we had the opportunity to look at sustained outcomes in kind of a different way. In past evaluations, we've reported on criminal referrals just at 12 months post JCP. But this year, we have also been able to include referrals at 24 and 36 months, so a longer time frame after JCP services. So this slide shows for youth with no criminal referrals before JCP. We see that the majority, 77% of youth, have no referrals up to 36 months post JCP. And we see that almost all youth, 94% of youth who did not have referrals prior to JCP, still do not have detention 3 years after JCP. This is the same data, but for youth who did have criminal referrals before JCP, so they had prior criminal involvement. We also see sustained outcomes for those youth. 60% of youth who had a prior criminal referral did not have any criminal referrals up to 36 months, and 71% did not have detention up to 36 months. Okay, this is our last highlight slide that we wanted to share with you today. We look at outcomes by risk level. So that's what this graph is showing. We've got all of our JCP youth here, low risk at initial assessment, medium risk, and high risk at initial assessment. Blue is no criminal referrals. Lighter blue, 1 or 2 crimes in the 12 months after JCP. Purple is 3 or more, and green is detention. So we see that 2/3, the 62% right here, of youth who are assessed as being high risk at their initial assessment do not have a new referral within the 12 months after JCP. And we kind of see a pattern we would expect. 92%, so almost all of low risk youth do not have referrals after JCP, 78 compared to 62, but we wanted to highlight the 62% of high risk kids we see that they do not have a criminal referral after their participation and receiving JCP services. Okay, I'm going to stop here. We are very interested in any questions you have, feedback, comments. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here and look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Thank you, Anna. So I would open it up to questions from the committee. Are there some questions? I could dominate this, so I have questions, but I want to make sure that everybody else has the opportunity.
But Molly always has great questions to dominate.
Others? And I'm actually going to open the floor because I have some colleagues that I see have come on. And I know Alice is sitting in for Christina, but I want you to be able to feel like you're a full participant. So are there any kind of questions that anyone has?
I do. That one slide, I think it was towards the middle, where after JCP, African American youth and Black youth, forget the slide, but I want to make sure that I was hearing right. The outcomes were worse after JCP. Was that? Did I interpret that wrong?
Is this slide that I have up here, is that the one you're thinking of?
No. Well,
Okay.
yes, maybe. Yes. That's the one.
Yeah, so kind of, but I think the fuller message is that oh wait, this one is okay, yes. So this is a little confusing. 24% of Black youth avoided having a criminal referral prior to JCP. So another way to think about that is they did have criminal referrals prior to JCP. And this, we were really trying to highlight the difference here. And then again, for criminal referrals post JCP, a lower percentage of Black youth did not have criminal referrals after JCP.
That cleared that for me. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome.
And so could I just add a comment there, which is, it is really important to note that the groups are a little bit different when they're starting. So even though the Black youth had a lower proportion of avoiding criminal referrals after, because they start out with such a much larger proportion that had a criminal referral, it isn't that surprising, but proportionally they actually do well then, because when we think about 76% came in with a criminal referral, then we see that reduction is actually proportionate to where they started, even bigger. So it can actually be considered kind of a positive because of the starting point of where they are.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Perfect. I really appreciate that. Actually, that was this question. This is the slide I was going to have questions on. And so thanks for taking Anna the time to clear that up. I think that's a great discussion for our partners at OJDDA to hear that explanation, because it's one of those opportunities to look at gaps and disparities and potential opportunities. So I'm curious on this particular slide, I really appreciate that the 4 that are captured here are youth of color and underserved or potentially overrepresented youth. I am curious how it compares to youth who identify as Caucasian white.
Yeah, and Juliet, I know that in our full report we have that expanded data. Do you remember why we didn't include youth who identified as white as in this particular graph? Or
It's okay, guys, you don't have to. I just think in the full report and a larger discussion, I think it would be interesting to do that. And I also really appreciate, Anna, you catching me on how youth identify. And I know that's one of our components to the JCP is that we ask youth to self-identify. And I think that's really important. I appreciate that about this particular piece and correcting my language.
thank you for that feedback.
Yeah.
And also, if we could include the Asian American, I know statistically and proportionally, Asian Americans are not that much, and but still, Asian Americans do commit crime.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that.
This is Brian from Coos County. So just for a point of clarification, because in my world, I think of things a little bit differently. When we're talking a crime, are we including like an MIP, alcohol, and marijuana?
Actually, the great question, Brian. I was going to actually ask if Juliet and Anna could explain what a referral means in the JCP data set.
Yes, thank you. Because the clarification of what that means changes this data significant for me on how I want to use it, potentially.
Yes.
Yes. So, and Juliet can probably add to this, but the way we handle the referral data that we use, there are various codes. We do not include the 0s and 1s. We are only, we are only including what is defined as criminal referrals.
Right, so no minors in possession, no status offenses are included in that, no dependencies.
So actually the definition is in statute, if I'm correct, Anya. actually of recidivism. And so it's any criminal referral for an incident that if the young person was an adult would be considered a criminal referral. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So
And
good
thank you
question,
for
Brian.
clarification. And then the only other caveat or weird thing question I may be curious about that, and you're not going to have the data in front of you, is because obviously with like methamphetamine and a variety of those now they no longer count as, so the data is going to be skewed. I love that you went back 3 years. I love that you can do that, but I think that quite frankly, previously when a kid got caught with meth, or I mean, I think that things are just it's going to change a little bit as far as the drug possession charges now. I think it'd be interesting to be able to squirrel that information out from your data from the last 3 or 4 years, so that when you project forward, it could be all of it, but then also how the laws have changed on how they're charged, potentially.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, are you going to be able to do that, Juliet, or is that going to need to be a conversation with OYA? Because you mentioned the 0 or the 1. You guys get severity codes. You actually don't get the referral codes. Is that correct?
I actually think we do get, do we get the charges still, Anna? I think we do.
I think we do. I
Okay,
think we
okay.
do, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Oh, that will help.
We may need to look at that to make sure that we can really tell the difference. Just to know which, yeah, in terms of the decriminalization piece, just making sure that we have the right one. So we may want to have a conversation about that, just to be sure we have the right codes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll be a conversation probably with Doug Thomas or Mike Greenwald to figure out which ORS has changed. And I think OYA, the Oregon Youth Authority, has that pretty clean because we had to do the statutory updates in JJS. So looking at the 20 next year, I think we should be able to pull that out. I don't see any, I think I might be the person that knows the most about that here. So that I think that's accurate.
Super, thank you.
Christina would be the person I'd turn to because she's the chair of our steering committee, but she's not here. Other questions?
Molly, Sam had a question in the chat.
Oh, Sam, let me read it real quick. Or Anya, you can read it. I don't have the chat pulled up.
Oh, no. Thank you for going to this slide. I just had questions. So, okay, so I remember I remember, and as Anya knows, I'm not a smart guy. So you got to explain things very.
Anya doesn't know that.
Yeah, I need to be, I'm a slow guy. So if I'm looking at this correctly, the blue says the percentage of kids, 81% of the kids total had no criminal referrals, correct?
That's right. Within the 12 months after JCP.
Oh, okay, within 12 months. So then the 15%, 1 to 2 crimes, that would be 15% of the 19%, correct?
15% of.
So 15% is of all the kids. Because the 80, so the 15 and the 4 and the 81 are a group. The 11 you don't have to worry about because that's a separate, it's kind of a separate thing. That's looking at detention. If I think I understand your question, Sam, that out
Okay,
of all
right. Now it's matching up. Okay, all right. Yeah. So like if I look at the total, 81, 15, and 4 equals 100. Next, 92, 7, and 1 equals 100.
Exactly.
Then 78, 17, and 5 equals 100, and then so forth. Okay. So green is not part of that 100.
Don't worry about green. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I was looking at this slide and see
Right.
These numbers
You're
don't match
absolutely
up.
right.
But then now that so now that you stated that the green is not really, you see what I'm saying, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so when I
Sorry
first
for the
saw this, it just caught my eye, like the numbers are not matching up. Okay.
Yes, that makes sense. And I do want to add one comment here. Sorry, Brian, I know you're waiting to ask your question. Just to note that high-risk youth, we have, with the assessment, because it is a validated assessment and we've used it for 20 years, we know that youth who are high risk have a 14 risk score or higher. At a 14, even just at a 14, those youth are likely to have 75% chance of having a new criminal referral in the next 12 months. So with youth that are 14 or higher, you would expect 75% or more of them to have a new criminal referral. And we have actually only 30, is that 8%, who are having a little, the new, so the 27% and the 11. So we have 38% who had one or more criminal referrals. So we actually can use the historical data to demonstrate to compare what we would expect without this intervention, without the JCP interventions, to show the kind of impact that these programs are having. So I just wanted to make sure you know that even though the 62% on the dark blue line looks a little bit lower than the other groups, it's because they're higher risk. We would expect more of them to be coming back into the system than we do. So I don't know if that was clear, but sorry, Brian.
I'm wondering if there were any significant differences or highlights in the data based on gender. Like my guess is, and Anna and Juliet, I've seen the draft, but I can't, like, I don't have it memorized like page for page, but were there things in the data as you analyzed it that if you, since you disaggregate by race, but as you looked at male, female, and then sort of the, not identifying as either male or female, were there data points that jumped out at you? Again, I'm assuming maybe not, because you haven't sort of pulled that out.
That's right. Yeah, for the most part, we looked at race, gender, and age for any differences, and we didn't see significant differences for gender or age.
Okay. And a follow-up, is there a way to, in the data, pull out any geographic differences, or how data may have looked based on geography? Is that possible? Or how can you help us think about what things may look like in different parts of the state?
That's a really interesting question. And we do have data based on county. I think we have zip code. So that is certainly an analysis that we could take a look at.
And I guess providing, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I was just going to say that we do have data, but as Anna's saying, because we have it by county, we'll be providing tables that have information at the county level. But if you are interested in looking at different regions of the state, or as Anna was starting to say around zip code, if there's some way that we can code rural counties, or if there's some way that you want us to look at the urban county. I know that counties have both areas, but if there's some way that we can look at that.
Yeah, and I wonder, maybe this is a question for committee members and for others on the phone. I mean, I'm sort of, maybe the county by county data that could be interesting. It also could maybe not be as helpful, but I wonder if, and again, it's a question, like if maybe population size, like, okay, communities with 30,000 and fewer, community with 100,000, and now I don't know if that's total population or youth populations. A youth population of 2,500 and less, and a youth population of 25,000 and less, and a youth population of 50. I don't know. I just wonder if that, and it might be interesting. In my own head, academic, kind of like, oh, that could be interesting. But I guess I throw it back, Molly, and again, other juvenile directors who are on the line. If that kind of analysis would be helpful, maybe we could look at that. But I just throw it back to the committee.
Sure. So I think part of the piece is what's interesting about this particular piece is that it becomes so interesting of a data set, right? And so I think it's one of those interesting pieces to slice it in so many different ways that typically MPC does a kind of a larger written report. And so I'm going to ask the question, is that kind of coming forward that will be presented to the larger group, and the conversations we're having today could then help maybe potentially feed into what that report finally looks like?
Yes.
Sorry.
Sorry, Anna. I'll make a little comment about our timeline here. So today is the first view of the report by the committee, and your questions are very important because they will help shape the final report that MPC will be providing for the YDC September meeting. Like in the interim, if there are additional questions and if something makes sense that will be valuable to both YDC and the counties, as well as the tribes, we'll all welcome your ideas, suggestions, and recommendations. If they're doable, hopefully Anna and Juliet could include them in the report. But also another thing, since we have county representatives here, there will be county data sets as well shared with all of you.
Yeah.
See, Tori, Brian, Alice, you all will receive your own information as well.
Yes. Can we answer? So Sam had a question in the chat, and I will just quickly read it. Which is wondering if there was a control group of youth that did not receive any JCP interventions or supports to compare to the outcomes. I will let you guys take that question.
Sure. Yeah. These data analyses do not include a control group. So we don't have that.
Hey.
Yeah, I had a question, Molly. In the one slide, I noticed there was, I think, 28 organizations that were entering information into Data Manager. My question is around the training piece of that, and maybe this isn't a good question for our presenters, but maybe more for the group. But how is training happening on administering the JCP? And I know just Juvenile County Juvenile Departments, we just went through an inter-rater reliability exercise for juvenile departments, and I guess wanting to make sure that when we're combining the data from JJS and the data manager, that everyone's kind of operating on the same level around how to administer the assessment and follow-up.
Well, Juliet has been providing training on JCP assessments to those folks who are using Data Manager, and when there are some issues or assistance is needed with how to work with the Data Manager itself, and then Tanasia and Lindsay, and to a degree myself, will help with those issues if there are. But Juliet is the main trainer for the JCP assessments.
Yes, and I wanted to add to that because of all the work that the group did on the inter-rater reliability, I know that there were some improvements that came. We helped to support some of the additional research to figure out how to address some of those questions that came up in the inter-rater reliability work. So the committee that worked on that process has recommended language that's changing for the assessment to be able to create a better definition for some of the risk items on the tool or some of the assessment items, including some of the demographic characteristics. So there are improvements now that are showing up in JJIS, and we've been working with YDD staff to figure out a rollout plan for that to happen also for the counties and tribes that are part of the data manager, so that we can make sure everybody's using the same information and getting that same tool out there. So that's coming, that will be coming too. So that will be an enhancement. The tool, of course, works well as it is, but it will be an improvement. We know that those clarifications will really help, I think, in some of the assessments that we get.
Tori, and I think some juvenile departments are actually using data manager to enter their as well. So the 28 agencies. So for example, well, no, I use JJIS. So Sherman County uses data manager, even though it's Amber who does the assessments. Other questions?
And this is Sam, I put a comment in the chat about, the thing about people entering data, because whenever, because I've been JDEP since 2008, but I think I took over LTCT, the residential, in like 2015, and the data was very bad, in 2015, but it took me until roughly about 2019 to get all 49 or 30 something LTCT sites to start submitting clean data. It takes time. And then the fact that it's double, I think that, and then with the assistance and training that you guys are providing, that's really great. It's a lot better than I could get, and my data is tied to funding, and people are still submitting low data, but now I'm comfortable, but I'm glad to see it's doubled, which is great.
Thank you, Sam, for that. I just wanted to make a comment to Sam's point. Yes, there's been a huge improvement in how people are entering data and how NPC researcher folks are able to clean it in quotation marks, meaning just so it makes sense. But also, I don't know if I missed it but it is important to know and remember that it's only youth whose parents gave the consent for their information to be used in the evaluation. Those are the assessments that were used in that data set. So it means that there were a much larger group of kids served. It's just that the parents did not give the permission for this data to be used. So my question to my field colleagues, is there a way that we as YDD could help you convince deliver the message to the parents that there is no danger associated with the consent, with the allowance of this data to be used? Well, please let me know, because I did have several conversations over the years with providers, just helping them kind of structure this conversation with parents who, parents have concerns what information can be used, having their child's name and stuff. And I'll let Anna and Juliet confirm what I just said, please.
Yes, absolutely. I was also going to add another comment, which was these last 2 years covered our COVID environment, which makes, I think, this work and this the numbers here really notable, because we know a lot of programs were closed during part or all of this time. I mean, there were a lot of challenges for service providers and a lot of challenges for all of you in human services. So it is even, I think, remarkable to be able to show that people were still trying to do this important work and making these impacts and reaching youth and families. And absolutely, we do run into some families and some staff who are really worried about the confidentiality, and as much as possible, we really do encourage you to reach out to Anna or me or Anya to be able to talk with people who feel nervous about it, because we can try as much as we can to reassure people about how careful we are with their information. As you can tell, what we report back doesn't have anything to do with individual youth or families or names, but it is really meaningful when we can get the full group together and see some of the patterns and see some of the benefits. So I actually had a parent call me not that long ago, because we have the consent form has our name on it. And she had questions about what is this and why would we share information? And so we're always open to those questions and happy to help. And if there are any staff in any of your counties or communities that are anxious about it or are getting questions from parents that they don't know how to answer, please just let them give us a call and we'd be happy to talk with them and try to provide that reassurance if we can.
Great, thank you. Any final questions? And I'm going to ask my fellow juvenile directors that are on here. We haven't run into that dilemma for us. We've been, but I'm just interested if the juvenile directors have experienced that in their counties, and or if you have thoughts or kind of ideas to share those back with Anya, so that we can make sure we get as much as possible. And Anya, we can by all means add that to a discussion at OJDDA when this document is presented to them.
That'll be great. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the calendar in my head, I think the YDC meeting will occur prior to the next large association meeting following the conference in September. Right, I think it's after that, right?
Yeah, it will. I think that's a question that can be kind of ongoing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we can actually bring it up just as a conversation at one of our monthly just board meetings on just brainstorming.
Absolutely.
Let me check the chat before I leave this. Any final comments, Anna or Juliet? That I have to just say I'm super excited to see the numbers kind of going up, and not because I don't think the services aren't being done, but it means that we on the back end with our data manager, we've gotten over the kind of the technology hump and we'll be able to have good data. So that makes me feel good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for having us and for all the important questions and comments and feedback. And always feel free to just reach out and get in touch if you want to chat more. We're always happy to do that. So thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, the next conversation is really around the filing or working on the JCP plans and updating us on the surveys, the smart sheets, and if we are able to move some of those plans forward to the council for kind of final updates and recommendations. And so I will let you take this away, or whoever has the capacity to share the smart screen or smart sheet might be able to help us do that.
Well, I think if Tanisha, if you could help me just sharing the smart sheets, and I will start by saying, I don't want to start from the very beginning because we've had this conversation for over a year now, but we did receive 20 asked, okay, let's start like from a year ago. So a year ago, 22, I believe, plans had additional questions raised by the committee, and all those questions were now known as question 6, which is the section of the JCP plan having reference to evidence-based programming and culturally specific services. So 22 plans were asked for adjusting that question 6 information. All 22 counties who were asked to resubmit their question 6 answers submitted and reviewed. And while Tanisha is picking it up, this is what we did. Sanjay just before developed a matrix of like looking at the information provided, and the information was divided into 3 components. One was, which were shared, was the like prior to the people were filling out the resubmission things. First component was, well, identifying and analyzing any racial and ethnic disparities in local data. The second component was describing cultural strategies. And the third component was explain how you achieve inclusive organization within your own entity. Now, each of those components had a maximum of 3 points possible. So a 0.9 kind of system here, if you got 9 points, it means that it's absolutely exceptional plan, and it's the highest score ever. And there were some counties who actually reached that score. 7 to 8 is satisfactory, so responses were, I'll just read from the sheet here. So satisfactory means that response addressed the prompt in an adequate manner and demonstrates average knowledge and ability with minimal to no apparent deficiencies noted. And needs improvement is 5 to 6, but I don't think we have anybody who fit into that category right now. So how we divided between the committee members. Each committee member got a set of counties, plans, the resubmitted plans to review. Each member who reviewed the plans put their marks in there. Again, on the scale from 0 to 9. And you see that most marks are within 7 to 9 range. Sanjay rated each one of the submissions before she left. So there's a special Sanjay's score column, and there are 3 reviewers. 3 reviewers associated with each of the resubmissions. Now, unfortunately, there are 2 people who were not able to enter their scores, and I don't know whether they did the scoring but didn't put it in the smart sheets, but that's the follow-up. But I think we have enough information in here to make recommendations to the YDC. And now I would just like to ask Molly to continue this conversation, like encouraging the committee members to respond to how they were doing the scoring, how that worked and anything. And I know Alice brought an amazing document with her that Christina had put together. I've never seen anybody done such a thorough and thoughtful job with the reviews. So Molly, I will put it back to you. And if you want to put Alice on the spot, it will be your decision.
So I do think that Alice holds the last of the keys in many of the boxes. And I did get the opportunity to review it as well. And Christina did just an amazing job and took the time to really walk through and consider it. So, but in reading hers, they're all in the same categories and fills in this document. So I do believe that, I think what was asked of the counties was to come back and just take a look and be thoughtful and really understand. And I think many of our county partners participated in conversations with Sonji before they resubmitted and had kind of dialogue with Sonji. So I really appreciate the fact that the counties reached out and really kind of rose to the level of where we wanted to have a conversation. So I'm just going to ask from the committee members, do you want, I think Tanisha has control of the screen, to just scroll through them all? Would you have access in your emails to pull this up if you would like, because everyone should have been able to engage in this sheet and read each other's notes. But I think I think we're at a point where we're not a deciding body per se of subcommittee, but we can just share to the commission that we were able to participate and review, and that recommend to the YDC to go ahead and accept the updates from the counties and move them forward as successful. I'm not sure what the term is, but we asked the counties to turn it in by a timeline. They did that. And obviously you can see in many of the conversations and the reviewers pieces that they stepped up. Now I think we need to honor our kind of timeline back to the counties and meeting ours. So I'll leave it at that, but leave it open to the board, the committee members at this point. Sam, Rafi, and any thoughts? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to anybody who wants to provide a conversation or a comment.
Molly,
Yeah.
would it be okay if Alice said a few words for
Yeah.
Christina? Because I just don't want Christina's work to go unnoticed, seriously.
No, I don't disagree. And I hope that we share Christina's documents back out with the counties that she reviewed, because she did such an amazing job and such a thoughtful response.
Well, thank you. I know Christina did put a lot of time and thought into this. I mean, I think you all have that, and I do think it would be helpful for the counties to get the comments. I think in my conversation with Christina, what was really interesting is that I think the guiding questions were helpful, and then I think the examples that I believe Brian put together on what were the different components that might be included in the guiding questions. It really brought out kind of some of the rich work that people are doing that isn't always easily captured in other formats. And, you know, also kind of highlighting some of both the challenges and opportunities working in a rural versus an urban setting. I think, you know, what was highlighted was the opportunities and the overall, like the relationships that people were building in with partners in the communities, even if they didn't have large communities of color. Some did. And I think those were also highlighted about like some of the kind of the exciting work. I'm gonna get the name of the county wrong. And I think it was Morrow County that has really built a lot of relationships and has a lot of community support for different, for welcoming different communities, but also some long histories with some of the departments and some of the tribal entities. I don't want to read Christina's report because you all have it and that would be really boring. I think the things that really stuck out to me personally were those, I think, positive youth development components where counties were including cultural pro-social activities as ways to complete community service. Because that's really building the community and honoring the community and diversity of right there. That was frankly kind of beautiful to me. And then also, you know, the question she posed about like digging in deeper into some of the data and the opportunities for that as, you know, as we go forward. One thing that she and I talked about in terms of training, and this was pre her meticulous review, but we were, you know, cognizant of the fact that like COVID has made it difficult, and resources make it difficult, but also COVID has provided some opportunities, and that is that for those counties, rural counties that may be able to work together to kind of put a training on and do it over Zoom, or have a training over Zoom, where it's not the same as is in person, but it has an opportunity to kind of share some of the unique challenges that might be present working in a rural community, by providing a training and or a collaborative opportunity there.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And again, if anybody gets the opportunity, she was just so very thoughtful in it. Thank you. I'm not sure, she probably had some conversations with Alice as she was reading it and writing it. So I appreciate your work as well on that, Alice.
Well, we had a conversation before and after. She was like getting ready for her trip, and YDC was a big part of that before she left.
No, her commitment is impressive.
Well, I think I do think, I will say this, like her commitment to the committee, but also really to the work that people are doing in their communities, and that taking it seriously about being able to provide comment and opportunities for discussion, because that's really how we believe like this work is going to move forward, like by having open conversation about both what's working and what's not working. So.
Yeah, so I actually have to admit, I'm a little disappointed she didn't review mine. I'm joking. But I know where she's at, so I can get her to do it for me. Any other, now I want to open it up. Any other kind of comments or questions from other members and community members that are listening to us, or directors?
I just want to say the guidance was really helpful with answering the question more fully. And I think, just kind of being able to see, glancing through the scores that people got on the rewrite piece. I mean, I think it was able to really help guide and draw out information that was happening that, hadn't been included in the first go around of that. So I appreciate the time that was spent on kind of developing that guidance and really kind of helping drive that piece of the conversation. And I'm hopeful going forward that, if there's other areas within our JCP plans, having that additional guidance is really helpful for us that are writing that and really trying to think about, in a broader perspective, many different facets that are happening within our communities that, that we're involved with, and those kind of things. So I just commend you for the work that went into that.
Great, I really appreciate that, Tori, and Anya and Sonji really get to own that. They were really key in doing that, and so I appreciate. I think the interesting pieces as we get ready for the next biennium, which is just around the corner, is thinking through what those questions are ahead of time, so that we are really mindful, not just in question number 6, but in all of the questions. So, the help is definitely something that I know they've been doing a road trip around the state. Some of the other members of YDD, and I think they're hearing that more often than not, that we all really want to do a good job, and the guidance questions and probing thoughts help us do that. So I don't know, Brian or Anya, if you want to kind of weigh in on that.
I just wanted to add that Brian was essential in developing of that, the last guidance that was shared with the counties as well. So we should give him credit where credit is due. Another thing I wanted to say that we also started the technical assistance to the counties, and we will continue. You probably know, you may not know, but we did open a recruitment for the RAD position. It's out there. We're hoping to get some wonderful candidates. So if you can help us share this announcement, that would be wonderful. And I'll always welcome your input. And yes, Tori, Molly, and everybody online here, we will make our best effort to make the new guidelines for the next biennium as user-friendly and meaningful as we possibly can. And I think the work that YDD staff is doing was Brian and our other folks doing community engagement meetings. That will be very informative for us as well, and it will have some influence on how the guidelines will be structured. So thank you all for your patience. Molly, I think we may want to consider doing engaging whether the committee is ready to move the approval of the plans resubmissions forward for the YDC approval. The meeting is happening on Thursday, and then,
So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to ask after this meeting, if there's no objection, that we send out to the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee that it was presented today, and we're going to make a recommendation forward to the YDC to approve and finalize all of the plans. And if anyone has any thoughts or concerns that they need to kind of debrief with ahead of time, to make sure they reach out to you. Is that okay?
that totally works for me.
So Brian, do you feel comfortable as the director for the, okay, perfect. Oh, welcome to BD. It's good to see you. So that will be the plan for moving the plans forward. There's a redundancy. We're going to move the plans forward that way. And thanks all to the committee members. I know this was a lift for everybody to do, and I really just appreciate people taking the time to do that and being thoughtful in their answers and making recommendations and comments. So really appreciate that. Okay, next on the agenda. Sorry, I've become so reliant on the agenda being on my screen so I can find it back again. Okay. Oh, yes. So will Lindsay be joining us? She won't, will she, today, Anya?
Well, she won't. She emailed me that she's on the road. She made it clear in her email. She said she is voice texting, not texting while driving. That she's on her way. She's on her way to Ontario right now doing her site inspection. So I'll just give a very brief one for her. So there's been a new development. As of this morning, the new solicitation has been released by the OJJDP for fiscal year 22. Of course, the application is due on August 2nd, but if you read inside the solicitation, some of the compliance materials will be due sooner than that, by July 19th. So there's quite a bit of work to accomplish between now and August 2nd. Part of that work is the new compliance monitoring information that Lindsay has been gathering and analyzing since after Ryan Shan's left. So there's one thing that she's working on is gathering information from law enforcement agencies, from OYA, from detention facilities and so forth. So that data set will be submitted to the OJDP during the summer. So that's one update for compliance monitoring. The second one, Lindsay resumed doing site visits, which we were not able to do the site inspections of the secure facilities in Oregon. That were kind of put on hold because of the COVID situation in the state. So she's doing a lot. And lastly, but most urgently, she has been working on the review and readjusting of some of the areas of our compliance monitoring manual that needed to happen because of the changes in the act and new requirements that were put out by the OJJDP. And that whole thing is holding our fiscal year 21 funding. And so there's been a lot of kind of concern. If you don't do that, you don't get this. So there's a lot of work and there's no money yet. So but hopefully, once the manual is resubmitted and gets approved, we will get our fiscal year 21 released, and then at the same time, we will be working on the application for fiscal year 22. At this point, I don't anticipate any, actually, I shouldn't be saying I can anticipate anything when it comes to the OJDP. It doesn't look like we will be in violation or out of compliance with any of the core protections, but we'll know. We'll keep you updated. And hopefully at the next meeting, Lindsay will be here, and by that time we will have both a revised compliance monitoring manual as well as a set of information that will, data information that will be ready for submission as fiscal year 21 application.
Okay, any questions? So at some point, and maybe all of the committee members understand the OJDP compliance monitoring and the very difference of how there's Title II and the compliance and all of these things kind of weave together. But if you don't, or you're feeling like Anya and I are talking sometimes in gibberish because of how these things go together, I would encourage you to reach out to Anya and just have a conversation with her about how these things have occurred, because we've kind of had a bit of our head turning left and right at the federal level for the past couple of years. And if everyone remembers, we had actually submitted our compliance monitoring plan, and then they changed all the rules on us and went back through a different process. And so it may feel like we're talking about the same thing over and over again. And that's not because we're repeating ourselves. It's because that there's been some changes at that we've been responding to changes, I guess, more than anything at the federal level. Is that fair to say, Anya?
I think you put it nicely.
I'm really hopeful now.
It covers it. I feel like, except left to right, I feel sometimes my head is spinning like poltergeist. Just I don't know. But anyway, so we will just do as, you know, as we're told. What else can we do? But it's time consuming, but we will get through. The thing is, when I saw the solicitation this morning, which is literally came out like 2 minutes before this meeting started, what I could see is that they did not change much of the language from the previous solicitation. So it means, well, to me, it means that all the communication that we had at the CJJ conference and during our back and forth communication with OJJDP staff about some of the challenges that they present to the field, that did not seem to have any effect. It's the same thing. But I will know more when I can go deeper into the solicitation and see what's changed, what's not. It just didn't look. So, but every time I do this kind of thing, it kind of reminds me of the importance and responsibility that we as an agency and committee have to our counties and tribes when we send out a set of guidances or guidelines. So Tori, Alice, Brian, I feel your pain. Let's put it this way.
Any questions for Anya on this particular piece? Okay. So let's kick off to the update on the 2022 CJJ Conference. And I'm not sure if who gets to kick this off. I definitely have my piece to share, but I think Brian, this was your first one to join us as YDD. So I'm going to let you lead on what you would like to share with the committee from CJJ.
Sure. Just as a little context, right? The Coalition for Juvenile Justice annual conference was in Washington, D.C., and I think that was early May. It doesn't feel like so long ago. And we took a group of, I think 6 or maybe 7 of us, staff, as well as Molly, our our advocate. We'll call her that, and that will the reason we're calling her an advocate. It will be clear as I continue. But I thought overall it was I don't know, for all of us here on the Zoom. I mean, I don't know, I imagine to different degrees, we've either maybe traveled for personal reasons or maybe professional or maybe not, or just as we sort of depending on comfort and opportunity, so to speak, may have kind of gotten out of, I don't know, beyond either the 4 walls or beyond your county or beyond your state. But for me, it was one of the first times I'd been on a plane, frankly, in a couple of years. So to get out of state and visit the capital and to be in a conference was, I think, a real awesome opportunity. And I felt like the sessions that the coalition had organized around youth voice, around community violence, around system transformation. They had some regional meetings. They had opportunities for our compliance monitoring staff. I mean, opportunities for Anya as the juvenile justice specialist and leader that she is at a national level. Thought all in all it was a good conference. One of the things that was happening in addition to the conference itself was a Hill Day. So we were encouraged to organize visits to elected officials at the federal level. And we organized 5 visits with staff from Oregon's federal delegation. I think I have a stack of cards here. And can tell you that we were able to visit with, this is not in any particular order, Congressman Bentz's office, Congresswoman Bonamici's office, Senator Merkley, also Congressman Schrader, and Congressman Blumenauer. And so those were all informative in their own ways. And we had 4 staff, and Molly was there, and we as staff were there to educate and share information. And because Molly is also a part of our council, but not formally employed by the state, she was in a position to be able to encourage the staffers to look at some of the things that the CJJ and frankly our state as a whole were interested in advocating for, specifically around the reauthorization of the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act, looking at just the federal support for programs. We've got our federal Title II. We also have some ARPA funds that YDD is administering. So just sort of a thank you and keep supporting us in that way. And then there were some other specific, the Medicaid waiver piece that I think the Oregon Health Authority is looking at. I won't get into too many details there, but all in all, good visits, good opportunity to meet with those staffers. They were really inviting and as a delegation, I think generally support the Oregon juvenile justice efforts, and specifically around the JJDPA reauthorization. I think they're all, at least historically, have been supportive of that. So good conference, good learning. And also just, great way to build some connection and some relationships among our staff with Molly and other, SAG, State Advisory Group members from around the country. Just to really appreciate having that space and time. Molly, does that do it?
It does. It was, I'm gonna let Anya, actually, let me introduce Anya to you. Anya is our National Juvenile Justice Specialist. She was elected on the last day to that position. And what that really is for Oregon is she has the opportunity to often know information and kind of strategies coming down from CJJ a little bit before some other states do. And just that ability to connect sets Oregon in a really nice position. And and she does a great job at it. So Anya, I would be glad to hear your perspective on the meetings and the training.
Well, thank you, Molly. It's a little overwhelming. I had such severe competition. I was the only person running, so that was like 100% chance of winning. Actually, I shouldn't say 100%. Nobody wanted this job, I think, like seriously. But as you said, I think what's really important in it is to have access to the information. It's really a privilege from that perspective for me to have and be able to share with you all, maybe a little bit ahead of the curve, but also have direct communication through this Coalition for Juvenile Justice with the OJJDP leadership. So when I said earlier today that I was a little disappointed to see that there's no change, no visible change in the solicitation that was just released, the disappointment comes from those multiple conversations that have been had with the agency, with the new administrator now, who appeared to be listening very intently and willing to make the changes within the agency. Maybe it's a little too soon to expect the change to come. I don't know. So we will see. But I am privileged to be re-elected. I'll do the best that I can, and I really support, really appreciate Brian letting me do it, because it takes it takes me some time, some agency time to do this work. Yeah, so I'll keep you posted if there's any information worth sharing that come. Thank you, Molly. And Molly wrote such a beautiful letter too. And Brian wrote such a, I mean, after they read your letters, they probably like, oh, we're not going to run for this position. You cannot beat her. She has good people.
So she underplays herself quite a bit in that. And so we all just know that. So I'm going to let you have that space, Anya, but I really appreciate her. One of the things that I think is interesting at CJJ is the consistency across Oregon and our representation for years. It was us from YDD, and then we had one of our providers actually had staff that attended the CJJ as well. And it was great to connect with them. I felt like the CJJ really brought something forward that us as both a juvenile justice committee, but also as what the YDC is really working on. There was a strong focus on family engagement and youth engagement. And what it kind of reaffirmed is in so many ways what the work we've been doing and how we've seen the shift in many of both our JCP plans as well as the work on the strategic plan of the YDD. Knowing that we're kind of the SAG, the state advisory group, we're kind of the SAG focused subcommittee. What I was affirmed of is even though we're the SAG focused subcommittee, the larger YDC is also tackling some of the same conversation. Youth voice being one of the ones that's a challenge, not just in Oregon, but across the state, across the United States. And there are some regions that are really doing well with that. And we're one of them. I mean, we're one that's actually probably, and probably even more than us is our neighbors to the north. They had the opportunity to present a couple of sessions at the CJJ conference. Several of us attended, which was around what they're calling opportunity probation and their kind of strategy of engaging youth and families in their probation opportunities. And another piece we heard from a couple of national advocacy groups that were just really interesting conversations to have. And so it's always kind of refreshing to go back to a national conference and realize that we didn't make a left turn in Albuquerque and go a different direction. So that was really, and that was great. And then the other was the conversations with our staff, the staff of our congressmen and senators. And I think probably the one highlight was we got a chief of staff in one of the offices, which I'm not sure if everyone has ever been back to Capitol and done a Capitol Day, but often you get your policy level, which we did. We got policy level people along the way, but it was Bonamici, Congresswoman Bonamici, correct? We got the chief of staff.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and not only did she know what we were doing, but she asked the right questions, and we weren't telling her something she didn't already have kind of her thumb and question on, which just is really nice to know that the voice of Oregon is being represented accurately in Washington, D.C. Also, Senator Merkley's office understood and knew exactly what we were doing. And so that was a really good conversation as well. For those of you who don't know, Senator Merkley has a long history with the commission and our system in Oregon. And again, collaborative working together is a strength of his. So it was fun to see the level of engagement, and I appreciate the opportunity to have gone back. I would encourage anybody, there's an upcoming conference in August, November.
So August, it's a National Youth Summit.
Oh yeah.
Coalition for Juvenile Justice organizes, which will be in Tacoma, Washington. So it's all events that CJJ puts together are open to anybody who is willing to attend. So if you have youth in your communities who might benefit from visiting with their peers and learning some strategies. I went to one of them several years ago with our youth members, and I found it to be very informative, very interesting. And that's the kind of event where adults are by the door. You know, you just, as an older person, you're there to listen to the youth, what they have to say to each other, and what feelings and wishes and everything they want to share. And so I was super grateful to be there. And if I say that I felt like a fly on the wall, I was a fly on the wall. And that was the intent. It's for young people to talk and to learn and to bring something home and then teach us. So I'm in full support of that one. And then the conference Molly was talking about, that's the Racial Nesting Disparities Conference. It's an annual one as well that CJJ organizes, and it will be in Kentucky this year. And I believe it's November 1 through 3. Yeah. And the same thing, they're open to everybody. So you don't have to be a member of the CJJ or member of a state advisory group. If you have an interest in what the information they're sharing and the presenters, I mean, it's up to you.
Yeah, no, I think it's really, again, if you have the opportunity to, I would just encourage you to consider doing that and participating. We as a state, so yeah, I would just encourage you. The RAD November conference, in the conversations that they were having back in Washington, D.C., the one that will be in Kentucky has some great presenters, and the content is coming along really nicely. So I would highly encourage anyone who could to participate in that particular conference. The other thing that happened is I represented all of you at the committee or at the board meeting of CJJ. And one of the things they ask is there's several subcommittees of the Coalition for Juvenile Justice, of which if anyone is interested in participating in a subcommittee, I think there's 7. So there's finance, there's audits, there's general government and government relations, there's fundraising, there's membership, and bylaws. So if anyone would like to kind of get involved on the national level, please reach out to Anya or myself, and we would be able to connect you to the right people to join the national conversation. even if you just listen, it is really interesting to get all of the perspectives. So anyway, there's my plug for CJJ. Anything else, Anya, on that?
No, I think you've covered it all. And again, if there and maybe what we could do, we could post some links to those upcoming conferences on the YDC website.
Okay. That would be great.
That helps, sure.
Now I'm going to open the floor. Anybody else? Brian, any final thoughts from you?
Nothing for me. Thanks. Appreciate everybody.
So I'm now going to open up the floor to just any other business, and I'm going to start with any committee members that just has, since we met a month ago, just has something has come up they would like to let us know about or have us consider or just kind of put on the radar screen for us. And so I'm just going to leave a space in a moment if anyone would like to bring anything up. Okay. Now I'm going to open it up to anyone on the call who would like to just have a conversation or a question. You might have just a burning question that you think our SAG might be able to answer, or just comments. Okay, hearing none. Anya, I actually think that we've been pretty successful the last few months of making this meeting just a 90-minute meeting. Let's see if we can't do that. Maybe the upcoming month is making it just a 90-minute meeting and kind of going from there, just so people are able to do that in the scheduling process. Does anybody have any objection to that? Okay. Okay.
I have a question though.
Yeah.
If we change it to 90 minutes, should it be from 1:30 to 3 or 1 to 2:30?
So Tabidi, do you have a standing conflict from 1 to 2?
On the on Mondays?
On the first Monday?
Oh, yeah, it just it's a great question. It sort of varies a bit.
Okay.
Hold up, let me. First Monday of every month, 1 to 2. You said 1 to 3 or 1 to 2? I'm sorry.
So do you have a standing conflict between 1 to 2? Because you tend to join us around 2 o'clock. And I was curious if it went from, I think Anya asks a great question. If we started at 1:30 and went from 1:30 to 3, would that be a better time slot?
So for example, in July, it could work. Then in August, I'm free from 1 to 2:30 in
Okay.
that first Monday. Yeah.
Okay.
And then September, I mean, I know you asked a simple question, but
No, I
but then
appreciate.
September, I'm okay, right?
Okay.
If we get it in now, and then in October, that first Monday, I'm free until 2:30.
So I'm actually going to ask us permission to cancel the July meeting because it's July 4th.
Mhm.
And so I don't think we have anything really pressing. We're at the end of our biennium or end of our fiscal year, beginning of our new fiscal year. And so I would like to give everybody a break on their calendar for July. And in August, is it 1 to 2:30 that you're open, or is it 1:30 to 3 that you're open?
In August, 1 till 2:30.
Okay, so let's do August 1st will be our next meeting from 1 to 2:30. And we'll try to, during our YDC meeting, really encourage everyone to be able to participate if they're able to. And then I'm going to actually ask again in September that we skip the meeting. And again, not because I don't think we have a lot of work. but that is Labor Day. And so it just becomes very, very difficult to set our meeting on the second Monday because there are so many meetings already scheduled for those kind of slot ins. But just know if there's something that comes up that we have to make a decision on, there may need to be a special meeting set. I don't think there will be, but I just want to acknowledge that. Is that okay, Anya?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
And in October, once we're doing it anyway, and Tabidi is here, Tabidi, what would work best for you?
In October,
Yes. October 3rd.
1 to 2:30 could work, if that's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank
That
you.
would work great. Thanks everybody for your time today. So yes, Sam, can we do our getting some meeting appointments set out to Nasia so that we have those on our calendars early? That would be great.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
This would be a quarterly, right? Or no, this would be the executive meeting. No, which meeting would this be?
This is juvenile justice.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. JJC. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. Too many meetings, too little time. I gotcha. All right, thanks guys.
Thank you all. Thanks, Molly.
Thanks, everybody.